want to thank all of our great sponsors. Without you, we wouldn't be able to be here on the Chitty Chat Chat or any other place. But we are on Roku. How many homes are we now in?
Well, thanks to you, you've added it on the screen, 39 million, because I just kept mucking that up. So yes, 39 million users in Roku.
On Roku. It's really crazy. I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, with one of the smartest women in our sector, Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Ray-Ban Group. I can't imagine a more wonderful person to be doing this project with. Yay, team. You have joined us for Asked and Answered. This is our Friday wrap-up show where all the questions that come into us, maybe during the shows, sometimes people email us. I've had people actually call me or text me on my cell phone, which is scary because I don't give this number out, but they do. I don't know how they found us on that way. And so I say, sister, let's go for it because we got a lot of questions. Okay, first one comes to us from Jennifer in Chicago. You're going to have to listen to this because it's kind of long. It says, I am the CEO of a mid-sized nonprofit. We are moving to a new CRM and we need to hire temporary labor to assist with the data entry and data cleanup. I am concerned that we will be giving temp help access to extremely sensitive and valuable data. The information about our donors, their profiles, and giving history is quite private. My question is this: should we have our temps sign an NDA? Is this ever done? Who would do this? Would we have the temp agency do it or the person that we hire or that is hired? And who would be liable if that temp stole our data?
Great question. I would love to phone a friend if we could and ask Katie with Staffing Boutique how she handles this.
Okay, so I'm ahead of you.
Good.
I did do that. I texted a friend or I emailed a friend. So Katie Warnick, one of our superstar sponsors of Staffing Boutique, she runs a really interesting business in New York that just does temp staffing for the nonprofit sector. And she wrote, great question. Literally in my career, I have placed over 1,500 fundraising database temps. And I can count on one hand the amount of times an NDA was done. While yes, the data is sensitive, it is so normal. Anyone with this specific skill set is aware of that. If it makes the CEO more comfortable, the temp employee hired would sign the NDA directly with the nonprofit.
Got it. That makes sense. And I was thinking, yes, I actually have a template NDA that I offer, non-disclosure agreement that I offer. I don't know if it's on my website, but that's something that I've created because this comes up with committees. So kind of all, volunteers that may also be privy to data. So this goes beyond, the temp position. It's relevant for the temp position, of course, and then also beyond. So I think that's a great answer, Katie, and I really appreciate your expertise because I would totally have phoned a friend and said, Katie, how have you navigated this question before? I myself, as a consultant, Julia, have been asked to sign so many. And because I'm a professional fundraiser, I also subscribe to the Association of Fundraising Professionals Code of Ethics. So that's kind of another level, to say, yes, I understand this is very sensitive data. Yes, I understand this is a lot of information on our community. And AFP, the Code of Ethics, really does go to great lengths to describe how, someone privy to this information does not take it to the next organization. So I know, and I'm sure you do too, serving on boards, the capacity and the opportunity for many donors and many investors in our community. This happens when you're privy to this data, just like this question. But how you manage that, manage the data and access to that information is really important. So you want to make sure, not only that you have a signed NDA, but that you really tap into the individual's moral and code of ethics on their own.
Yeah, I never had thought about this before. I know that, I was thinking back on my own experiences. It seems like if you're on a board, the information that the executive committee gets is different oftentimes from the full board. And it always seems like on the executive committees I've served on, donor data specifics is released more fully, and that to the regular board they don't always get that data. It's kind of interesting, like the nitty gritty donor kind of profile stuff. So Katie, thank you for answering Jennifer's question in Chicago. And I thought it was only Beyonce and Jay-Z that had the big NDA thing going on.
You're so hip.
Say that. Well, no, they always say that if you're going to be around them, you have to sign the NDAs.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I've never been invited to their close circles.
I'm just saying. Yeah, you have to surrender your phone and sign the NDAs. Come on, sister. What kind of parties are you going to?
Not those, apparently.
Okay. So now Jonathan from Houston has written in. Now more than ever, I think it is important to have our main department heads in on the Zoom board meetings. It seems that it would save time if our leadership was available to answer questions right then and there. I have had some pushback from board members, interesting, who think it adds too much time to the meeting. Wow, can you help us with this? Jonathan from Houston. Mm-hmm. What say you, friend?
Well, and I'm curious if we're going to agree on this, Julia. Yeah, I don't mind having the executive team in on board meetings. However, I really like to have all of this information prepared ahead of time and given through the proper board channel. I also believe that, these kinds of departmental reports can be shared in advance. And this is something that your board should read and become familiar with prior to the meeting, so it's not first heard during that meeting. I love a good board meeting to stay under an hour or under. I know sometimes there's really, a lot of discussion that needs to happen, and we may not stay under that hour. And if you go into executive session, that could certainly extend beyond that hour, of course. So to back this train up, I really don't mind having the executive team there to answer questions, but not to read bullet points on an update, if you will. So, I think this is also a great time that the CEO and the board chair should be briefed on what questions may come from this data that's being shared. And then also, just like you and I do here on the show, is, that's a great question. I don't know that, but I will certainly get back to everyone in a timely manner. And I'm sure that happens at every board meeting, not just specific to program, but there may be an unanswered question in which you can circle back to the entire board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I've seen boards do like a focus on a department, and they give them 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, and everybody knows, okay, we're going to have somebody from this, group or that group. Then they come in, they might do a very quick presentation or say, these are some of the questions that were asked, so that there's a familiarity with even their faces and their team. And so that the board can become a little bit more understanding what their jobs are. Because I agree with you, the board packet portal communication piece should be read, but we see our board members not doing that enough, which is a big problem and a topic for another day. But yes. I agree with you. I think that it's positive to have them in there for at least a period of time at some point, throughout the year. I think it's extremely important. I really do. And
we didn't differ. We didn't differ
not too much. But Jonathan from Houston, my other big thing that I was thinking about was that if you have board members that are complaining that their meetings that their concern is not the value of information, but that it adds too much time to the meeting, you might have a bigger problem, and that is how your meeting's structured and how you're running it.
How it's managed, right?
Yeah, managed.
I just heard from someone that their board meetings are every other month for 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's a retreat. I mean, a half-day retreat, but wow.
It is, and if you're doing that, I would say anybody that's dealing with that with their organization, I would ask you or challenge you to find out what is the quantity and quality of retention for those board members and their decisions that they're making in hour 2 versus hour 4.
That's
It's
right.
not healthy. It's not a good way to go.
No.
I mean, it really isn't. Okay, let's move on to Ruth Ann from Kansas City. You ready?
Ready, sister?
I lead a small development team. In the 2020 budget, we had planned on investing in some new fundraising tech that will navigate us towards younger donors and virtual fundraising. With COVID-19, all department heads have been asked to submit a revised, read lowered budget. I think this is a really key investment. How do I sell it to the CFO and CEO?
Oh my gosh, I think you've got so much data right now to back that up, especially when it comes to an increased use in our digital world. So, one, you definitely do, and we talk about making data sexy.
Yeah.
I would say, pull your data in those demographics. So you really want to know your segmented donor base. And then from there, where have you invested time, energy, effort into all the different segmentations? And then specifically, how and why this platform software that you're looking at is critical for the development, the stewardship, and cultivation of this specific donor segment. So again, I think this is the perfect storm to back you up because of the I don't want to say overuse, but everyone's on digital now, and it's not going away.
Right.
So, and in fact, I was, gosh, I forget who it was, but I think I was listening to a webinar yesterday, and the millennial, segment, they want more information more often. And so they want to be talked to or touched, as we say in our donor world. They want to be touched and talked to, or with, I should say, more often than an older demographic. So if this platform can support that data and that research, I say you've got a lot of legs to stand on.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that, we've been talking about this, our guests have been talking about this. It's somewhat of a broken record on the Nonprofit Show, but now is not the time to pause. And as Cindy May said yesterday, pause and panic, which I thought was fabulous.
Pivot.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Pivot. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Pivot, don't panic.
Pivot, yeah. Pivot, don't panic. I mean, you're right. This is huge, and it is. It's a big discussion because it's not going to necessarily be smooth. There are going to be some challenges. Technology provides us with so many opportunities, but there is a learning curve. So get in, as they say, fail fast. Right. Awesome. Okay, this one is another phone a friend situation, and I have to witness, after we had, this deals with board portals, after we had the CEO of Boardable on, our Jeb Banner, our executive producer, Kevin Pace, told me in our staff meeting that I behaved towards him like a teenage girl when the Beatles played Shea Stadium, because I went off on him, and I was just so excited.
Well, he was fascinating. And yes, I thought, just such great information. So, okay, what's the question and what did you reply?
The question is very interesting. It says, it comes from Susan in St. Louis. We are looking to move our board onto a cloud-based board portal. How long do you think we need to get our board members used to this? I'm worried that we could lose some on this journey. I'm referring to the older board members. Mm-hmm. So
what's the Jeb?
Jeb said, this is very interesting. He said, board adoption, which I loved that he used that word, can take anywhere from one meeting to several. Some of our quote unquote power users are in their 70s and 80s. There is also a persistence piece on the part of the board liaison or administrator, which I'm assuming Susan from St. Louis is that person. These board liaisons, they need to stick to it with their board members, or they will slip back into the way they worked before. Primarily, they need to wean their board members off doing everything via email, particularly sending board attachments.
Great. You know, and I do, I hate to use this phrase, but it's well known, right? You can teach an old dog new tricks. And I really do think it comes in that consistency. And too often have I seen organizations have a portal, yet fall to the request of board or committee members to say, hey, can you just send me that attachment? And they do it, you know, instead of, hey, may I walk you through this again? You know, really everything's here. So Jeb, thank you for that response. And I do think that, you know, it really comes back to that consistency on how do we continue to adopt and you know, use this process to our betterment.
Mm-hmm. So when you, Jared, are working with clients and you take a snapshot of the landscape, how many nonprofits that you work with of all sizes are using board portals?
I would say it's 50-50.
Really?
Even,
okay.
yes, even some smaller organizations under $1 million, 2 million even have board portals, which I think is great because as Jeb said in his episode with us, you know, there's never a bad time to start it. So even if you're a smaller nonprofit or startup nonprofit, it's okay to integrate that from the beginning, right? Because then you grow to that. So, and I will say, of those 50% that use it, 100% fall guilty of sending attachments outside of the portal.
So until he said that, until he wrote that, I didn't realize that's really something to look for. That, I mean, that,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I hadn't really thought of it that way. But yeah. And also for compliance issues, it's really a problem because if you have an issue that comes back to a decision that the board made, if you're using your board portal, you can say, well, this was all the communication. This is how it was, you know, voted on. You can even tell if somebody opened up a file, right? You can track all that. But if you're doing an offshoot piece, that goes away.
Yes.
So I get that. That's really cool. Well, Jeb, that's fabulous. And I appreciate that he took that time to answer that question. Okay, so we've got another big question. And so are you ready, Miss Jarrett?
Always ready. I'm prepared to wing it. That's one of my life mottos. So yes.
Well, I need to make sure everyone understands Jared hasn't seen these questions.
Haven't seen them, haven't read them, not prepped. I'm just winging it.
Winging it. It's Stump the Chumps. I'm throwing myself in there. Okay, so this comes to us from Frank from Philadelphia. We are moving forward on a WFH, work from home policy for our staff. It's obvious to everyone that the pandemic is pushing us towards this new normal. What are some of the policy items I should include?
Well, I'm going to throw up there definitely technology, right? Like that has been a really big piece in all of this is where is your technology housed? What are your policies and procedures around technology? You probably also want to include the work hours, you know, like, or at least specify that if you do have a specific time in which, you know, someone should be working from home or accessible. That may seem silly, but I'm going to be honest, for me as a consultant, I do my best work, as you know, Julia, I'm an early bird. So by 2 p.m., you can pretty much guarantee my brain is not functioning with all cylinders, you know, the strongest. Yeah. So it's kind of like that 4-hour board meeting, you know, I'm done. I'm shut down. So for me in my role, I am able to choose my hours, if you will. But as an employee, that's a very different scenario. There's several HR representatives or professionals and experts out in the field that provide templates, sample policies, sample procedures. Sky Mercer is one of my favorites. She's been on the show and she is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to human resources and building in and up these policies and manuals.
Yeah, we've also had Tara Bethel on, and she's spoken about that. I think it's really important also to have that compliance issue so that if you're dealing with minors, you're dealing with children, so the differences at that age 18 break, children versus minors under the age of 21, anything to do with medical, the HIPAA issues. You need to really look at this because it's not just when are you going to be accountable and what are you going to wear on the Zoom meetings kind of.
It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, it's really not. And I think that everybody's learning. And so Frank from Philadelphia, I don't know what your nonprofit does, but I certainly would, be thoughtful about it. And I would reach out and have it reviewed. I really, really would. Okay, so what's our time? We got time for one more.
Yeah.
This comes to us from George in San Francisco. What is the best practice for a CEO to announce their retirement? Should it be public and in advance of finding a new leader? This is a good question. What does that time frame look like? Our development team is worried that donors and funders may think we are having problems with leadership.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Do you want to go first?
No, I want you to go first because I don't know the answer to this. I mean, know the world of interim management. So tell me what you think.
Right. So I'm going to compare it to that. So when we look at a transition, whether it's planned or unplanned, you really do need to have, identify all of your stakeholders because you need to communicate with each of them in a timely manner, right? And some before the others. So I always see really that transition as a great opportunity for the outgoing CEO to pass the baton, if possible. Not all of them leave in a very amicable manner. To pass the baton, if possible, make an introduction to some of these stakeholder groups with an exit and someone coming in. You may have seen, Julia, I had this happen just recently. So I finished a contract with a nonprofit as their interim CEO. So again, an interim, it's very specific. It's not a substitute teacher. It's not a placeholder. It really is a professional coming in for this interim transition piece on a very strategic and alignment platform. So I identify the stakeholders and then, identify with them when I come on in a similar manner as when I'm terming off, and then when possible, make introductions to the new, hopefully full-time CEO in an interim space, but it could be another interim depending on where the organization is. But this is a great opportunity to really share with your investors/donors that the organization is investing in capacity and really investing in the development of sustainability and all of the best practices. So don't see this and don't message this as we're not okay. This is a sinking ship. Make sure your messaging and your communication all points to the investment that the board and the entire team has taken to move the organization forward.
I think that's great advice, Jarrett. I knew you'd be able to give us a good view on that because it is so different. And I agree with you. It seems to me when I read this, George says, our development team is worried that donors and funders may think we're having problems with leadership. Maybe they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they are.
And look at that, right? Like look at your turnover rate, look at your executive leadership team, all of that. It's possible. I mean, that definitely happens. I had a wonderful conversation with a really big funder here in town that did think that me coming in as an interim was a bad thing, that the outgoing CEO did some damage or the organization was not stable. But the fact that one, as an interim and a professional in this field, I've known this person for quite some time. So I was able to have a very open, transparent conversation and gain her trust in the process. I showed up with a prepared document of here's the bullet points, here's what I want to share with you, here's the action we're taking. And she basically, the phone call went from what I thought was going to be pulling my teeth out to 15 minutes of, thanks, you outlined it all for me. This is what I wanted to ask. So
cool.
Yeah.
And I see this kind of maybe as an opportunity to go on that, publicity tour. It's like, this is a great way to get some new ideas or blood or face or whatever you want to talk about
Absolutely.
Even if it's the same mission, vision, and values, but it's a reframing, or it's just an opportunity to get in front of somebody who says, yeah, I already know about your organization,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
And
use the new card for a year.
yeah, yeah, it's true. It's really, really true. Wow. Well, Asked and Answered is an amazing day for me. I always love it. I always love to hear what the pain points are of our viewers and people around the country that send us questions. So thank you. Keep them coming. You can send them to info at the American Nonprofit Academy, AmericanNonprofitAcademy.com, or reach back to us even during the show. We always want to know what you're thinking, and Jarrett and I are really blessed to have access to a lot of great minds, not including ourselves. I'm not saying that, but that we can garner great responses and answers to your questions. So absolutely keep those questions coming. Again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I've been joined with Jarrett Ransom, your nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Ray-Ban Group. And we want to, again, thank our sponsors who make this all possible. Reach out to them and let them know that they're providing an amazing service. Roku, how many American homes?
39 million.
39 million. It's crazy. And you have to check it out. It's a little alarming to see everything so blown up on a giant TV.
That's great.
But it's cool. It's really, really cool. So this has been the Nonprofit Show. We are just thrilled that you are with us for another episode and another week. We have a big week ahead with several guests. And so we're excited that you're going to be sharing that with us. I want to say thank you to everyone and end with stay well so you can do well. Thank you, Miss Jarrett. Have a great weekend.